Welcome, everybody, to the Building Aaronsburg podcast. I'm Thomas Aaronsburg.
And I'm Catherine Aaronsburg.
Today, we're going to talk about learning styles, how Catherine and I learn a little bit differently, and maybe you do too.
Maybe you do too, and you don't even realize that there's a difference between you and your spouse. Because if you don't have kids, possibly you never would have ever thought about it.
Yeah, you probably don't pay attention to it.
I think the reason that we have realized, and I think I knew it about myself before, but probably the reason why we especially know and can see it in our own, division is because of our children.
Yeah.
And how they learn and how it has
Because
directly.
they're all different, and they all have their own.
All different, and yet directly I can see, or at least mine, I can see where mine is coming out in the little ones for sure.
Okay, so let's give a couple of examples of yours and mine, and then we'll maybe go from there. So how about we'll do you first? Go ahead.
So do you want me to describe what my learning style is?
Maybe
the best way for me to describe probably is just my differences. At least what I thought were my differences when I was growing up, especially in high school and college.
Mm-hmm.
And more so in college probably because I lived with other people that were not my family, and I could see how much they were studying in books and doing, projects and the various time they were spending studying for school.
Right.
Compared to me.
And it was more or less?
Much more in a very different way. So I have never studied. I feel as if I'm not capable of studying. When I look at a page, even if it's notes that I have written in class,
mm-hmm.
I'm not gaining any more information than I did when I was originally there. So I very much learn through someone talking to me, having a conversation with me, or through visual aid as far as like a movie. I can learn, if I watch a movie about penguins, I will learn everything about the penguins. But if I read especially a textbook style about penguins, I will not remember anything about the penguins. If someone's speaking to me about the penguins and I'm writing notes, I'll remember it because as I write, that action of writing is committing it to my memory.
Yeah, and you also listen to a lot of podcasts, too.
I listen to a ton of podcasts, and I learn, I'm always like, today on this podcast I was listening to, I'm always referencing the podcast about all the interesting things I'm learning. So I love to learn. It's not that with the way that I learn, I don't like to learn. It's just that my brain can't, I guess.
You don't process it.
I don't process it the same. And of course, the word processing has been a very recent word in our vocabulary, I think, as far as studying and learning and things like that, as far as, education and classroom and all that, because we have a child that has, I don't know if you'd call it a processing difference or disability. They call it a disability. I don't love the word disability just because I don't think that I have a disability.
Is it disorder or disability? Because there is a difference.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, they call it a disorder, which I don't really know what the definition of disorder is.
I remember in all of my education classes that I took to become a teacher, there was a distinct difference between disability and disorder.
Mm-hmm. But still, as far as what they call accommodations that they'll give you in school.
Right. Yeah, they'll give you
disorders
for both.
also?
Yeah,
okay.
They'll give you for both.
Okay. So he has a disorder.
ADD and ADHD, the D is disorder.
Right, that's true. Yeah. But the nice thing about having a child that he struggles with school very much, but it's taught me so much about myself because I see that exactly what he has is what I had, and it never would have been defined when I was a kid.
Right.
I mean, I'm 38 years old.
Well, the science wasn't there. They weren't really studying that, or they were just starting to study that. In the 80s is when they really started studying stuff like this.
I think there's a lot more kids that have it than what we're willing to even talk about. And I think that that's another reason I wanted to talk about it today is now that we have a child that has been diagnosed with a processing disorder, and I see it in myself, I know he got it from me, like DNA, genetically, he got it from me.
Mm-hmm.
I have told other people about it, and they've had their children tested for it. And when we read up on it, I remember they said something like between 1% and 3% of the entire population have it.
Yeah.
And I think it's just because people aren't getting tested for it.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're really pushing this ADD thing.
Yeah, I think that number's going to go up.
I think so too. As it becomes more of a...
Well, as it becomes better defined. I think right now all of that stuff if you're a lot of times if a kid's struggling in school, that a lot of times that's the diagnosis they get is ADD or ADHD, and sometimes it might be more than that, which is what we thought with ours.
Yeah. But, ultimately it comes down to the fact that school, at least when we were kids, school was taught one way. There was
Right.
no, dividing kids out and teaching to the learning capabilities of the child. It was
Right.
just you're sitting in the classroom, everybody's learning the same. And so I always struggled. I didn't struggle much. I made good grades. I was not a D and F student. I wasn't that
Sure.
level of struggle. But it's because I was a good kid and I paid attention and I wasn't a discipline problem. So I wasn't messing around in class. I wasn't talking and,
Right.
all this type of stuff. So I was paying attention, and I'm smart enough to where when I paid attention,
You got enough of the material
if I did
to
not
make
get it in the
work.
classroom listening to the teacher
Right.
and writing notes, it was not going to happen for me. So like ACT time, when I'm taking tests to go to college from, I didn't study for the ACT. How on earth?
I don't think you're supposed. I don't think you can technically study. That's what they say.
Yeah, right. That's what all these prep courses are for. There's prep courses, and it's all study.
Well, it's testing strategies. A lot of those prep classes are testing strategies.
I know, but I couldn't have. I just couldn't have. Like, I know that about myself, and I even think about getting a master's degree or something like that. And there's nothing. I got out of college after 5 years, and I was like, forget. I'm never going back here ever. Ever, ever. Thank goodness I was in a major that's a design major where there were very few non-design classes. Even in the prereqs, they were like...
You didn't have to take history and English and math.
I think one of each.
One of each?
Yeah. Like, and they were freshman year, so they were like 101 level type things.
Yeah.
So I 100% stumbled into taking classes or majoring in something that just happened to be... Like, I've wanted to be a landscape architect since I was in 5th grade, right? So who would have known? Catherine Cannon would have not known that college would have been such a low prerequisite for any kind of thing that was so difficult for me. No idea that was going to happen. So I definitely lucked out.
You just happened into it. Yeah.
Yes, very much lucked out in that way. And then, I mean, design classes were hard too. Don't get me wrong. It's not like
they're hard in a different way. They're not.
Yes.
You weren't having to memorize facts and dates and.
I cannot do it. My brain does not process that way at all. So anyway, I also had a really hard time with history, which I know you don't have a hard time. You love history.
Yeah.
You always could understand the order. I just didn't like how history was taught. It never made sense to me that we would take, world history or civilizations, and then there was no linear in my brain. I could not envision what the world looked like at one time, because you would study like Chinese history or like the dynasties.
A lot of times that you studied in high school, at least the way our high school was structured, you would study Western civilization from 0 or before 0 to I think 1500, and then sophomore year would be 1500 to current. Then you do like U.S. history.
Yeah,
so they would sprinkle in, because you're studying Western civilization. You're not studying Eastern civilization. You're not studying what's happening over in Asia during all this time. And so the only reason you ever paid attention to what was happening in Asia, because it affected trade routes with Great Britain or something.
Oh God, don't even get me started with the trade routes. Like
Christopher Columbus, he was actually looking to get to the Indies.
I was so disinterested, and I think that added to it too. I was disinterested also in history, but generally all that cluster happening at one time, and it did not seem linear or clear in my head as to when it was happening, why it was happening. Like, I had no context for anything in history at all. And so that history was my biggest nightmare.
Well, and I think it's a subject, because of the way you learn, you're not learning. You don't like learning about dates and facts and figures.
I want stories.
Yeah, that. And it's not a process either. Like, math and sciences are processes.
Mm-hmm.
And so you learn processes by doing.
Mm-hmm.
And so in a math and a science class and in a design class, they show you the process. And so you're actually learning because they're showing you how to do it. Whereas in history and English, it was probably, hey, go read this, test tomorrow kind of thing.
Yeah. And I will say that has been a huge gift to us with a child that has this, not disability, but difference, however we want to call it.
Disorder.
It's been a gift that I understand what he's experiencing because I've experienced it myself.
Yeah.
And so like today you were helping him with his I guess it's a history project.
It's for his history class. Yeah.
Okay, he's doing what they call a wax museum, where they choose a historic figure that's from the state of Alabama, since we live in Alabama, and he has to dress like that person. They're going to stand in the gym, and then you quote unquote press a button. They draw a red circle on their hand. You press the button, and then they give their little speech that they've memorized about where the person's from, what they did that made them famous, all this different stuff. And I knew, like,
yeah, this is gonna be a struggle for him.
I handed it off to you, A, because I don't have the patience to deal with him because I have such a processing issue, and B, did I say one or
You
B?
said A,
Anyway,
yeah.
A and B.
A, 2.
Do that all the time. And B, I knew that he wasn't going to be able to memorize it. Like, in order for us to process it and memorize it more than just its words, you had to speak it to him. He couldn't read it off of
Right.
a piece of paper. And if you can make it into a song or a story, it will stick with him easier.
Yeah.
And so being able to have my 2 cents about that, I think, like, if we were 2 typical learners with this kid that had this disorder, I would never have known how to, like,
Right. Make it make sense for him.
yeah, figure out how he can learn best.
Right.
And so I do sympathize with people who don't have pass the genetically their own issues onto their kid, to where they can at least relate and have a conversation about it, because it's rough.
Yeah.
I mean, even having the processing disorder with him, the both of us, it's still hard, because I don't have patience for it and he doesn't have patience. We're like 2 pushing together, magnets that are
Right.
bouncing off of each other. So
Yeah.
anyway, that's my problems. How is your very typical learning experience, Elvis?
I don't know what my shortcomings are. I'm sure that I have some, but I haven't experienced them like you, I guess. Other than they've led to a lot of laziness.
Like, you're so smart.
It's
that you
not a
just pick
smartness
stuff.
thing. So yesterday we were at my nephew's graduation, and my brother and I were sitting there in the stands. We have this program in our hands, and he turns to me and said, "Have you memorized enough of this program to where I can test you?" And I said, "Oh, I didn't know you wanted to do that. Give me a minute." And about 2 minutes later, he's like, "All right, I'm gonna start asking you questions." And he asked me
5 questions,
5
probably.
or 6 questions. What does this symbol stand for? What was the most popular last name? And I probably got 4 out of the 5 right. Just cramming,
Weird.
essentially.
Yeah.
So I know that I'm really good at that. I can cram. I was
Which,
helping.
honestly, in school, unless it's math that's going to build on itself,
Yeah.
that's what we're teaching kids to do, in my opinion. We're teaching kids to be able to cram.
Yeah, I
Because
can
all you need to
cram
know
like a
is for the
beast.
test.
Like Gregory's thing today that I was helping him with. I helped him find all these facts. I'm like, all right, he wrote them all down, and I was like, all right, read it to me, and then put it down, and now you try it. And he couldn't do it. I was like, dude, like, I got this. Like, I could do it right now if I had to perform
Yeah.
it. I could, But I know that's because I can, for whatever reason, I just have a lot of short-term memory, I guess. I can just stuff a bunch of information very quickly in just by reading it or seeing it.
I think when it's something for a level below mine, I can do that. I probably could have done it for his history project that we're talking about.
Yeah.
Especially since it's kind of an interesting subject about learning about Tuskegee Airmen and what they did and what the guy's
Right.
name was. I probably at this point could do it. But if you want me to do that for, like,
The graduation pamphlet that we
yeah, that
did
couldn't have,
last-
that for sure would not have happened. But no, people have asked me to give speeches before.
Right.
There is no way. If I ever had to do a TED Talk, which, that would be like the joy of my life if I ever got to do some sort of TED Talk. But those people have memorized. They wrote and memorized those speeches.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I could do it. I have to just be on the seat of my pants.
Yeah.
Let's just talk about something. I could talk about almost any subject for an hour.
Yeah.
But the idea of writing and memorizing a speech, forget about it.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. Do you think you could write
I've
and
done it before. Yeah.
and memorize a speech and
A lot of times I
Okay.
don't memorize the speech. I'm trying to. So like the other day I had to I coach football and we had a signing day thing, and so we had 7 athletes.
Oh, and you're
that were
memorizing like
signing.
stats,
Yeah.
which is even worse.
So
oh my gosh.
I had the stats written down on a piece of paper because I knew I would forget them. But then, like, the 2 or 3 things that I wanted to say about them, I just made like a little sentence about each kid. So
And by the way, these are kids that he probably didn't coach, so didn't know a lot
there was
about.
one that I coached at my position, and the other
Okay.
5 were on defense. I'm an offensive coach. So, like, I had all their stats written down because I knew when we got to that part, I would just read 21 tackles, 5 interceptions, whatever. But the parts that I wanted to say about them and their character and what they've done, I mean, I wrote down a couple of thoughts and then.
So that learning, isn't it called rote learning?
So
ROTE?
rote learning is when you just memorize. You do things repetitively to where you memorize
Like
them.
times
The way that you
tables?
did your times tables in
Still don't
third
know
grade.
them. I still don't know my
Yeah.
times tables. I'm 38 years old and I still don't know my times tables, y'all.
Which I remember that being super easy for me
Like,
in third grade. I remember that the teacher, the way that they did it is when you mastered what one number, whatever number it was, they would put like a little scoop of ice cream on the board. And like you would get all the way up to 9 scoops,
yeah.
and then at the end of the year, or I don't even know if it was the end of the year, whenever it was, there would be an ice cream party, and depending on how many scoops you had,
Mm-hmm.
that's what kind of ice cream you got. So if you got 9 scoops, you can get the nice ice cream versus just.
Oh my, this is very complicated.
I
That was
know.
like second grade, right?
Well, it's third grade, I think,
Third
is when they do
grade.
that.
Although our child that has the processing disorder is very good at math. So it's not.
But again, it's processes though. I think it's because he learns the process in class by watching it and by doing it.
Yeah.
And so when he has to perform it,
maybe his third grade teacher was just better than mine, and it's just the one thing because I will say that a lot of times my math skills off the top of my head are better than yours.
Yeah, I'm really bad at that.
So, and I don't know why that is, but all I'm getting at is
okay. So that's what I was going to get to. I do think that one of my shortcomings is because I know that I have that ability, I don't work very hard at all. Because
you work hard in general in life, very much so.
Right, but if I had to, like the ACT, I didn't prep for that at all.
Yeah.
Zero, like negative prep.
By the way, we're in Alabama. SAT is not as popular down here.
Right.
That's why we're speaking of the ACT. It's just everyone takes the ACT here. I don't know if if we're all going to Southern colleges, because I'm sure other colleges around the country.
I think some of them accept both. Some of them only accept one or the other. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, in general, I don't know anybody who took the SAT when we were coming up.
I'm sure they did, but even if someone had told us in high school, "Oh, I made a 1400,"
we don't know what that
the
means.
heck does that mean?
We don't even know. We know what the ACT scale looks like and what it means and how it. You got to, 34 on your ACT. That's impressive.
Right.
But I don't know what 1100 on an SAT means. Is that failing? Is that good? I have no idea.
I don't know either.
There's something that says it's like you put your name on the test and you get a 12 out of 30. I don't know
if that's a real thing.
I don't even know either. But anyway, all this to say that I think sometimes we have people around us that learn differently, and especially as we're adults, I think that it's easy to associate someone as being smart or not so smart or whatever.
Right.
Not that you know specifically how they learn as such, but speaking to them, things take some time or whatever. And I've just learned over time that doesn't mean that they are dumb. It means that it just takes them a minute to catch up with. They just learn differently,
right?
And not just learn like A's and B's and 1, 2, 3s and that type thing, but A's and B's, A, B, C's and 1, 2, 3s.
Yeah.
But also looking you in the face and speaking to you. It may take them a minute to even process what you're saying to them,
right?
Just because their brain works a little differently.
Yep.
It's been very interesting. I don't have that issue as much, and maybe I've honed it and crafted it a little better as I've gotten older. And I
think as you go along the way, you learn tricks,
coping mechanisms.
With whatever the weaknesses are, and also to play to your strengths. If you know that you learn a certain way. You know that, hey, I need to get this material in this way. And don't write it down for me because that's not going to help me.
Right. Yeah, and I think, too, another thing that we've learned along the way is, and actually the reason why we had our child tested so early on, I think he was in kindergarten when we knew something was going on.
Right.
The teacher didn't want to test him because he's so young and just hang on and wait,
When they can't read at that point.
Right. But we knew. We're his parents and we knew. And we wanted to get him tested as early as possible so that we could start coping mechanisms.
Right.
That was super important to us. And the reason why is because we knew that as he progressed, that he would feel behind, and that would make him feel a certain way.
Yeah.
If you learn differently than other people, you know it. You look around your classroom and you know that everyone around you is picking it up quicker than you, and there's a possibility that he would feel like he was stupid.
Yeah.
And that was something that I couldn't handle him feeling about himself, because that's something that you can't change. Once he starts to feel that way, it's a very hard boat to turn around,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, it is.
And so I wanted to start the process super early of giving him coping mechanisms so that he could achieve and feel confident in himself. And we're still working on that. As early as we got started, we're still working on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll be a lifelong process for him. I don't think there'll ever come a point where he's mastered,
but
his
hopefully,
coping mechanisms.
Hopefully somewhere along the way, he'll be really excel at something,
Right.
to the point where it can overshadow that other part that was less than compared to other people, because it doesn't matter what you do. Kids are always going to compare themselves to others, or at least look over there to their neighbor and see how somebody else is doing. And there's nothing wrong with differences between people, of course. If there's somebody super smart in your class, they're smart. Like, there's nothing wrong with being differences. Obviously, everybody needs their differences, and they're all good. But I just didn't want his differences to make him feel less than. And so we're working on that over time. So I'm hoping, like I said, as an adult, he will pick up something or really realize that he is good at something that will, push back the other parts of him that felt bad about not being as good as other people.
What he's going to be good at, because of his learning style, is not going to be what other kids are going to be good at. We've already said that we think he's really good at making relationships.
Yeah, he is.
Which has nothing, that will show up nowhere on a report card.
Right.
No one in school will know, like, hey, that guy's great at relationships. We recognize that because we see the way he interacts with people and what people come back and say to us about him. And, oh, we just love him. He's whatever kind of a kid.
He's a sweet boy. He really is a sweet kid.
But that's never going to show up somewhere. So I think he'll realize that someday.
Mm-hmm.
And so whatever career path he chooses will hopefully, be somewhere where that he can use that as his strength to move ahead.
Yeah.
Because it's probably not going to be something where he's going to have to sit down and do a bunch of stuff in some books and read books and memorize facts.
Right. Yeah. And I know that I've mentioned it on here before that I was like the disappointment kid that went to LSU instead of Notre Dame, because my family all went to Notre Dame pretty much except me. Or got like 34s and 36s on their ACTs. Not me. Like, none of them were me. And so I would say not pressure, but just I knew I was the dumb kid in the family. Like, I didn't feel that as much at school. I felt it more at home. And so, I think now that I've come into my own with my business and have developed my own marketing strategy and do all these videos and have like built a successful business, that is me overshadowing the stupid
but
that
again,
I felt I was.
I see a lot of Gregory in you in that way too, because you are really good with the relationships, and you make really good relationships with people, with your clients, with the contractors you work with. That has nothing to do with how smart you are.
Right.
So you might have been, at least like you're saying, you felt like you were the stupid kid growing up.
Here's the thing,
but the job that you have now requires no...
I know, but it's like anything else. That is 18 years of your life at minimum.
Sure.
That you were in school. Well, not 18 years. You start when you're 6, whatever. 18-ish years of your life that you were in that system of accelerating in the classroom, being super important. And it's like we have another child he's a boy and he's short. You're short. You're 5'6". He looks to daddy and he sees that you're not super tall. Height matters to boys a lot. Weight matters to girls. Height matters to boys. It is what it is. It's a society thing. It is what it is. So that makes him feel bad. We tell him all the time, you're going to get a growth spurt. We know, we've told stories about, we know people who've gotten growth spurts in high school or in college. You're in 6th grade. Like, you've got so much time. But when you're in it and you're in the day-to-day, thinking about the possibility of that happening is...
Well, you're walking around and everybody's taller than you.
Well,
the girls are taller than you.
Yeah, but I'm just saying 18 years, so flip back to the school stuff.
Yeah.
18 years of your life and people were going, one day you will have a job that's going
Right.
to play to your strengths. You've been beaten down by 18 years
Sure.
of thinking you're dumber than everybody else because that's the system that you're in.
Right.
You're in the system of height being good, weight low being good,
Grades being high.
grades being high, scholarships to colleges, all this different stuff being good, and you're not. You don't fit into that box.
Right.
And when you're little, you just want to fit into the box.
Right.
And so
I don't think that changes when you grow up. You still want to fit in the box.
I don't care about fitting in the box anymore. I really don't. I think to a large extent we do fit into the box in a lot of ways, and so maybe that makes it easier.
I think the box changes. I mean, when you become an adult, you want to be by your peers. You want to be seen as successful and happy.
Sure,
that's a different box than being tall and smart.
Sure.
And
yeah, but it can be in a gazillion different ways.
Sure.
Happy and successful can be a million different things.
Right, but people use, money.
Right, money
as a general standard for success. I mean, if you're upper middle class, you're successful.
Right. I don't think we fit into that box, though.
No, I know, but I think that people use
we definitely don't fit into the box
judgment.
Of wealthy. I'm just saying we don't
Sure.
care as much about the money equaling success.
Right.
But yes, I agree. There's always boxes to be had.
Yeah. And I would say people that are not wealthy or they're even poor probably feel the same way that the short kid felt in middle school and that the dumb kid felt in high school or whatever.
Yeah, the struggle is real.
You're using these standards that are whatever, and they're arbitrary standards, but you feel like they're standards that everybody's using, and they really don't matter.
Yeah,
in the end, they don't matter.
I think the sweet spot is being able to again know thyself, take a step back, and realizing that they don't matter, and why, or questioning yourself, why do I think
should they matter? Yeah,
right. And even being able to identify what that box is that people are trying to fit themselves into, because I think sometimes the things that we've learned about, like I just said, weight, height, smarts, getting into college, scholarships, all this type of stuff, those are super obvious ones.
Right.
But there's lots of more nuanced ones, especially as we get to be older.
Like having and making good relationships. I mean, that's a measurement that I think it's important one, but people don't. Like, there's no way to really measure it.
Yeah, I was thinking
other
of
than,
way
like, you
more.
look around and you have a good set of friends, you have a good family. You have, in your professional world, you have good relationships with the people you work with.
Yeah, I was thinking of a lot more vain ones than that.
Well, I'm just
that was
saying
such a nice one.
Right. Those are, yeah, sure.
I'm thinking of, do I drive the nicest car? Why do I want to drive a nice car? Do I need a new car? Like, this one's fine. Can I be okay with this car?
Right.
There's so many things. Do I have a boat? I'm just thinking all these. They're all things, I guess.
Is my house so big?
Right. Certain square footage or in a certain neighborhood or a zip code or whatever. And I think so many times we don't realize that we are putting ourselves in that box. I think that we think we want to live in a certain zip code because it's close to school and it's whatever, but it actually says, you feel like it says something about you.
Sure.
Like, dig deep. Let's figure it out. This always turns into a psychology podcast.
People don't want to do that. I don't want to look in the mirror.
Yeah, it's hard. It's really hard. But anyway, so, if, I guess first things first, consider if there's someone around you that learns differently and how many things that affects. It's not just school.
Yeah.
It affects a lot of different things, relationship-wise, some nuanced things are lost on people that have a certain processing disorder.
Yeah.
You're just not going to notice certain things, and then they are heightened in other ways, touch, feel, all these various different things. And so identifying that maybe in people who are around you, friends, family.
Maybe even yourself. Maybe people
yourself.
Are listening right now and be like, wait a second, that was me.
Yeah.
I'm not stupid. I know I'm not stupid.
Oh,
but I couldn't make the grades, and I couldn't figure out why I couldn't make the grades.
Gosh, if that's what could come out of this podcast, I would love that.
Yeah.
If someone were to identify it. Because if you don't have a kid, honestly, guys, I didn't know this until we had a kid
I didn't
of our
either.
own.
Yeah. And I'll say this, but as a teacher, for years I taught, and I would get these reports. This kid has this disorder and this disorder, and whatever. Sit them in the front, give them their, go through the paperwork and make sure you get all the accommodations. But I didn't
you have
really,
empathy.
Yeah, I didn't really take a an interest in it, I guess might
Mhm.
be the best way to say it, other than to make sure I
Checked all the
followed all the
boxes.
paperwork things that they asked me to do.
Yeah.
But now, like, I see certain kids and the way that they're struggling, it's like, huh.
But that is always how most of us learn. As I would well, maybe not. Maybe at least we learn the same in that way, but I think all humans, maybe not all, learn in this way too through experience,
Yeah.
right? And so you had those kids in your class, but you weren't really experiencing them
Sure.
as far as their learning capabilities and
Right.
learning differences.
Well, other than they wouldn't do well, it's like, oh, yeah, he's got that thing, and
Right.
oh, well.
So you were aware of it,
Right.
but you weren't seeing through and through. I
Right.
mean, you live with this kid and you live with me, and so you see day and night how
Well,
it.
and it really made it worse last year when we had to do the quarantine, and I was trying to teach him,
Yeah. God
and I
bless
was
the
like
teachers.
banging my head against the wall trying to
Yeah.
teach this kid.
God bless the teachers.
And it, sadly, for years I probably was teaching kids or at least spitting information out that I thought they were just going to pick it up because
Mhm.
everyone else is picking it up perfectly fine, and little Johnny's not getting it. But oh yeah, he has that thing.
Right.
Let's just keep going. He's got a thing.
Yeah.
Whereas now I'm a lot more aware
Aware.
and empathetic to.
And I think too, especially, and I was certainly this way, and I've told you about it several times. Not as a child, usually you're not willing to raise your hand, and maybe you can't even articulate if you could raise your hand and wanted to, um, what needed to be repeated or what needed to be
Right.
changed in order for you to learn more effectively.
Yeah.
Like I've mentioned before, I was a Division I athlete, and I used to pole vault in college, and we would watch film sometimes.
Yeah.
And I remember I would not go to the coach and ask him, like, what can I do better?
Sure.
What can I change? What can I just, and I think I don't think that's part of the processing disorder. I think that's just the youth. Because sometimes you'll come home from your football practice and be like, this kid did this. And I'm like, well, did they ask you about it? And you're like, no. I'm like, I bet they're afraid. Not afraid, but just like,
They don't even know to ask.
they don't even know that they can ask you or
Right.
what to ask. And so sometimes I think you have to identify that and then spit that back at them so that they're get the juices flowing and understand what they can ask. And because I think
Right.
these kids are playing a sport, they want to improve, they want
Sure.
to do good, they want to achieve and excel, but don't have the words to put to the person who could help them to help them with
Yeah.
that. You know,
I usually make them explain to me.
now repeat
Like
it
when they
back.
like when they mess up. What'd you do wrong here? Whatever.
Yeah.
And if they don't know, it's like, well, see, like you don't even know what you did wrong. Let me tell you, and then
But sometimes I know there's been times before where you've had several students, I think, that you've come and told me that you realized they couldn't figure out how you were teaching, and so you had the teacher that's next door who's also a math teacher explain it the way that they do it. Like you've got several methods you can teach them if they're
Sure.
not getting it by the second or third
yeah,
method.
and I tell them that all the time because a lot of them have tutors that
Mhm.
they go to, and I tell them, look, if your tutor's got a way that makes more sense than what I'm saying,
Just get the math problem done, whatever it is.
yes, there's more than one way to do this, and
Absolutely.
I mean, ultimately, it's the same way. It's just the way your brain comes to putting the pieces together
Absolutely. Yeah.
is what you got to do.
So that's our conversation about learning, you guys. Do any of you guys have this processing issue or any other learning disabilities that make you unique and special? Because I really do think that it's just coming at life a little different way. You guys can send us an email at buildingaaronsburg@gmail.com. You can see us on social media and comment on social media, Facebook and Instagram at Building Aaronsburg. And until next time, bye y'all.
Bye, y'all.